You're listening to This is Yoga Therapy. I'm your host, Michelle Lawrence, and I've had the opportunity to interview many of those who are making a difference at the intersections of yoga and health. And I'm here to share with you their stories and conversations. Thanks for listening. In today's episode, I interviewed Philip Shepard. Philip is the author of New Self, New World, Recovering Our Senses in the 21st Century. He leads workshops internationally on the art of embodiment. And during the podcast, we're going to speak about embodiment, the body's three brains, and his workshop centered on reconnecting with one's being. It's really great to meet you, Philip, and have you on the podcast today.
Thanks, Michelle. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
I'd love it if we could just start by having you share a bit about yourself, your background, and what brought you to the work that you do today.
Yeah, I sort of am inclined to go back to teenagehood, which is a sufficiently unsettled time in most people's lives. But for me, I was in a rage because I could feel my life being made smaller, being hemmed in by forces I couldn't clearly see, by my culture, really, by the way it understood what it means to be human, by the strictures with which it lays out behavior. And on the one hand, it was a rage. And on the other hand, that rage was rooted in my love of life, that I could feel being depleted. And so it was either stay within my culture and be worn down or leave. So as an 18-year-old, I went to England and bought a bicycle and headed off for Japan. And in doing that, I passed through so many different ways of understanding what it means to be human. And every one of them was luminous, and every one of them was limited. But I was gone 2 years, and by the time I got back to my culture, I had gained the ability to ask questions of it. So suddenly what was utterly familiar and taken as an assumption showed up as bizarre and arbitrary. And so that germ of questioning has flourished, has not gone away, and continues to this day. And one of the main lines of that questioning comes back to the body and comes back to what it means to be present. And I should say, all my life, I've been involved in theater, and as an actor, as a director, as a writer, and as an actor primarily. And what an actor faces with every role, with every exercise they're given, is the chance to discover another way to be present. That's what the training of an actor is all about. And so as my questioning of the culture evolved and my deepening into the body through the actor's discipline evolved, the two came together, and I started giving workshops for actors that were largely informed by classical Japanese theater, because that's why I'd gone to Japan to study no theater. And in no theater, for me, it's the consummate performance art. It is this shimmering evocation of being, and the center of a no actor is in the belly, in what Japanese call the hara. So as a teenager, I'd been introduced to that and brought that into acting. And then at a certain point, I was ambushed in the middle of the night with the first line of a book in my head, and that became my first book, New Self, New World. And the workshops I'd tailored to actors evolved into something just about embodiment and presence.
I love all that. And I wasn't familiar with that part of your story. It's so interesting. Just yesterday, I was thinking about acting. I'm not an actress myself at all, although I did a little bit in high school, I suppose. But I just watched the Bob Dylan movie with Timothy Chalamet. I don't know if you've seen it or not. It was so good. And I'm such a huge Bob Dylan fan. But Timothy Chalamet's performance was just so excellent. And that's what had me thinking about this craft of acting and what it takes to train as an actor. So I was in my mind a bit about that yesterday. And it's so cool that this is sort of your backstory here and this development of presence and embodiment and the work that you do. So
Yeah,
maybe we can talk. Go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, no, I might just add that
Mm.
that every character you play is a different being, has a different body. And at the same time, every character you play is you. There's no
Yeah.
person who is not another me. And so in that process of allowing the body to shift its rhythms and its weight and its energy, you are making more and more space for your own being to respond freely to the world.
Cool. Well, let's talk about this term embodiment, since you use it a lot. We do in the yoga world as well. And let's just kind of set down a definition. Maybe you can explain what it means to you, the term embodiment, and then how it plays a role in the healing process, because that's sort of our intersection here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I do have a go-to definition for embodiment, which is that embodiment is a state in which the whole of your intelligence comes into coherence with the present. So embodiment is not about feeling the body. That's a necessary step. But for me, embodiment is about feeling the world through the body. And in that sense, I feel the body as a resonator. I have a singing bowl in my hand, and as I touch it, it rings to the world. And that's how I feel my body awakening to what is around me, resonating to it. And what tends to happen in our culture is we stuff our bodies full of concerns and agendas and self-doubts and aspirations and plans, and it loses that spaciousness, that emptiness. And as a consequence of that, all we can do is guide ourselves. When the present lives through you, when the body comes into coherence with it, there is guidance in every moment. It's like you are shown the way forward. When you are deprived of that guidance, then all you can do is sit in your head and busy yourself with making decisions. And, embodiment doesn't exclude the intelligence of the head. It is inclusive of it. And so, what does it mean to face a challenge or face a decision with the whole of your being? What does it mean to feel the present as a whole as a result of your surrender to your own wholeness? And when you speak of the therapeutic value of embodiment, I barely know where to begin. Our word heal comes from a etymological root that means whole.
Mm-hmm.
Healing moves us towards wholeness. Without embodiment, there is no wholeness. And there are so many ways in which our culture baffles and cordons off and desensitizes the body. It makes it feel normal to live in the head. It's a little like a fish swimming against the tide to be immersed in this culture that so deeply neglects the body and delegates it to a secondary status, to come back to the body, to come back through the body to the present. I mean, that is a journey of healing just in itself.
Yeah, yeah. And, it's so similar to how we approach a person in yoga therapy, right? This concept of wholeness is so inherent to yoga itself. And the orientation through the senses is so key. And I noticed that that's part of your book title. recovering our senses. And so that's sort of a basic map to then how we understand all the layers of being through the models that we use in yoga. So I don't know if this relates to the body's three brains that you talk about, the senses, or if they feel separate in their subject, but maybe you could speak to the senses and also the body's three brains and what that means.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the senses, the body is our bridge to the present. It's through the body we feel the present. When you're living in your head, you are at a distance from it. And the brain in the head does not feel. You can do surgery on it without anesthetic. It does not feel it. It notices, it categorizes and brings into hierarchy the world around it, but it doesn't feel. And so to speak of the senses is to fall prey potentially to one of our cultural limitations, which is that we have five senses. And it is a cultural artifact. There's a culture in Africa, the Anglo-Ewe, who have approximately nine senses. And they don't even have a word for senses, but the closest word they have is Seselalame. Seselalame translates as feel at flesh inside. So they have a word that means to listen with the ear, but that's not real listening within their culture. Real listening is when you feel the sounds of the world through the body. Real seeing is when you feel the sights of the world through the body. And their primary sense is balance. Now, I find it curious that in our culture, we don't validate balance as a sense. So, we have an organ devoted to the sense of balance. We speak of the sense of balance, but it's not one of our five senses. For me, the reason behind that is because our culture feels the self separate from the world. Well, if you're living in the head, you can do no other than that, because the head is cut off from this bridge to the present, this sensational body. And every other sense follows the model of, well, here's a stimulus from the outside world that sort of crosses the boundary of the self and lands on a receptor where it's sent to the brain for interpretation. So all the five senses we validate follow that model. Balance doesn't. Balance is a living relationship. And we don't want relationship. We want to be, safely secured within the boundary of the self. And to look at other cultures is to open the possibilities of what senses mean and how they operate. One of the most interesting aspects of the Anglo-Ewe sensorium is that they consider language to be a sense. And we think, how could they get it so wrong? I mean, a sense receives information and language delivers information. But I think it's we who are blindsided. When I begin a sentence, I don't know where it's going to take me. Each phrase, each sentence sort of points to the next, illuminates the next. It's like following a stone path to what end I know not. I don't know where it's going to take me. And so I am feeling my way forward through the grace of language in the same way that I would feel my way forward into a dark room with the touch of my hand. To understand speech as a sense, again, is to open it to the phenomenal bounty of discovery that it makes possible. Now, that doesn't yet address the three brains.
Yeah, let's talk about that. But that is such an interesting bit of food for thought, how other cultures perceive the senses. And yeah, it's kind of eye-opening for me and a bit more of discovery needed.
We take it as a scientific fact that we have five senses. Everyone knows it. And what a limitation that is on our experience of the world, not to feel the sights of the world through the body and to feel the sounds of the world through the body, to feel every sense through the body.
Mm-hmm. And yet, on the flip side of that, I think when many of us live in our heads as we do, we're actually cut off from our senses. So even though our culture may be limiting in understanding that there's only five senses, at the same time, I think many folks don't even have that orientation, don't even have the ability to tap into the present moment through their senses. And I think that might be an initial doorway or an initial gift.
Absolutely, just as feeling the body is an initial gift to feeling the world through the body.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not to discount that, but to stop there is an
Mm.
impoverishment.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Let's,
then, the three brains,
yeah.
just to touch on that briefly, I think one of the gravest errors in our language and our understanding is that we think of mind and brain as being synonymous. And yes, the brain is in the cranium and it's a phenomenal organ, but mind suffuses every cell of the body. There's no cell in the body that doesn't participate in thinking. And there are three sort of locuses of thought, and certainly one is the cranial brain. Another is the heart, which has a neurological density that has led many physiologists to say, yes, this is a brain. And then there is the enteric nervous system, this so-called second brain. I mean, in evolutionary terms, it's the first brain, but we call it the second brain that decides, senses, remembers, calculates. It is in many cultures recognized to be the foundational intelligence of the body. And there's a culture in Australia, an Aboriginal culture that recognizes the three brains, and its metaphor for the brain in the head is a tangled fishing net, which I think, the intricacies of doubt and second guessing and grasping and putting together and taking apart. It is a fragment of our intelligence that believes it to be the whole of our intelligence. So there's a real parallelism between what I speak of as the head intelligence and the body intelligence, and what Ian McGilchrist, who has written the most brilliant book I've ever read called The Matter with Things. And the whole of the book is devoted to differentiating between right hemisphere and left hemisphere thinking. And left hemisphere thinking has all the characteristics I attribute to head-based intelligence. And right hemispheric thinking has all the characteristics I attribute to the body's intelligence. And one of the characteristics of the left hemisphere is that it needs nothing from the right hemisphere. It is complete unto itself. It will justify itself, confabulate in wild ways, and believes itself to be the rightful arbiter of truth. Whereas the right hemisphere is inclusive of the left hemisphere, welcomes what it has to offer. And I see that, when our thinking is felt through the whole of our being, it is it is tempered by the whole. It is grounded in the whole. And so it has a precision and an accuracy that this overworked fragment of our intelligence can't possibly achieve.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it true too that in the Tibetan culture, the word for the heart and the brain or the mind are the same? Have you
Oh,
come
I
across
love, I
that?
love, I love that. I'm not familiar with it, but it makes so
Uh-huh.
much sense to me.
Yeah, yeah, I think it is. Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about movement and breath work, since we're living in that world oftentimes in yoga and yoga therapy. So, from your perspective, in your experience, how does movement contribute to healing in this embodiment process? What kind of movement is most beneficial? And similarly, how important is breath to the process of embodiment and healing? And what are some techniques that you utilize to enhance that process?
Yeah, I mean, movement. Um, what kind of movement is most beneficial? I would say subtle movement. And we take charge of the body with the head and tell the body what to do so easily. We've been so well trained to do that. And life is subtle, and it's in when you come to stillness that life is most brilliantly revealed. And so to find, the subtlety of turning the head, the subtlety of lengthening the spine, the subtlety of the body in flow, you are no longer in charge of the body because you can't be in charge of the subtlety. The subtlety is revealed through the slightest movement. So some of the biggest transformations are initiated by the subtlest of awarenesses. And I liken it to epigenetics, where on this little molecule of DNA, there's one little change that on a grosser scale shows up. And for me, in terms of movement, it is in that surrender to the body's subtlety that we connect most deeply with its potent resources and liberate it most easily. In terms of breath, my goodness, again, our culture has shut down the body to the breath. Breath becomes something we need to muscle into the body. I would never say to someone, take a deep breath, because the head knows exactly what that means, knows exactly how to implement it, and makes the body do it. And you push the breath deep into the body, and that takes muscular effort. Well, eventually the muscles get tired and the breath goes shallow again. So my approach is really different. And a lot of it really comes back to the pelvic floor. The pelvic floor is a diaphragm in the body. It is technically a diaphragm, and it moves in concert with the thoracic diaphragm. But what happens in our culture is, as we absented the body and moved the center of awareness into the head, we cloaked the whole pelvic bowl in this shadow of neglect. And the pelvic floor, in most people, in my experience, has deadened to the breath. It's held in a sort of tension that is unyielding. And when you recover the sensitivity of the pelvic floor to the breath, you feel it release down with the in-breath and release up with the out-breath. And with the release of the pelvic floor, there is a subtle invitation to the whole of the body to release with it. So to release the body to the in-breath initiated by the pelvic floor, and release the body to the out-breath, again initiated by the pelvic floor, the body moves from a sense of the breath being a top-down operation where the breath is pushed from the top down into one in which it's more like a jug filling with water, where the breath first appears on the pelvic floor and it fills the body from the bottom up. And it's not a muscular effort that creates that. It is a muscular release. It is the release of the pelvic floor. And in my experience, that's how a baby breathes. I have a 1.5-year-old granddaughter, and to watch her in her crib, the whole body releases to the in-breath and releases to the out-breath. It's just exquisite to watch and learn from. There's another aspect to breath that I should mention, which is the back is shut down to the breath. So as an actor, most of my breath was in the back. I realized if I take a breath into the front, I feel separate from the audience, if I'm an actor, from the person I'm talking to. It's like establishing me in a way that is separate from you. When the breath moves into the back, it's like an embrace. It is inclusive, just as the right hemisphere is inclusive of the left, as the body's intelligence is inclusive of the head. So I feel a male-female dichotomy between right and left hemispheres, between head intelligence and body intelligence, and also between front and back. My energy in the front feels male and it's out there, and the energy in the back feels female. It taps into a mystery and a realm of support. And it's just interesting to me that in all those cases, it is the female pole that has been denigrated and neglected and forgotten.
Mm. Makes me think of in yoga, the front of the body is considered to be the east side, and the
Hmm.
back of the body considered to be the west side. I don't know if we can make any connections here, but it just popped into my mind as you were speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a lovely analogy that the
Hmm.
sun's setting, that it
Hmm.
is setting into a mystery.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that feels like the back to me.
Right. Versus opening, right? And
Yes,
rising. Hmm.
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Hmm.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can talk about some challenges people face when trying to reconnect with their bodies. And say you're someone who is discovering your work and wants to feel more embodied. What obstacles might they encounter and how can they overcome them? What are some words of wisdom?
The biggest obstacle is that as soon as you have a means to an outcome, it becomes something you do,
It's work.
something to achieve.
Yeah.
And what my work is about is how to effect a surrender. So there are, to move out of that sort of over-organizing realm of being and over-organizing realm of doing, I meant, and join your being. And for me, there are 5 qualities of being that are innate in our nature. So being is fluid. Everything is in flow, and we mistakenly think everything's just a static thing, but no, everything is a process. And the body is in flow. We're 65% water, but the body becomes this obdurate, solid thing in our culture. We lose that inner ocean of exchanges. And it is those fluid exchanges within the body that facilitate its health. It's when those exchanges are inhibited by tension that distress usually follows. So fluidity is inherent in being. It is your nature. Then the question is not how do I achieve fluidity? It's already there. You can't achieve it, but can you surrender to it? And similarly, groundedness. We are at rest on the earth. We have been since the day we were born. But we we have turned the earth into the realm of hell and the sky into heaven, and we aspire upwards, and we have forgotten that we are at rest on the earth. We don't feel ourselves at rest on the earth. So how to surrender to your human beingness? Human means humus. The
Mm-hmm.
etymon it comes from is earth. We are
Yeah.
earth beings, and we have lost that ability to rest on the earth. Our energy has gone so high. Spaciousness is another quality of being. You can look into a diamond with the eye of a physicist, and it's 99.9% empty space. Being is mostly empty space. You are mostly empty space, and yet our bodies become congested and wrought with tensions and concerns and obligations and fears. And to recover the spaciousness of your being is to once again experience your capacity for resonance, like the singing bowl, where you can once again feel the world, feel the present living through you. Centeredness is another quality of being. Everything has a center. And there's a quality of nature where what is created is usually created through this union of complementary opposites, and they often move in spirals. And every spiral has a center, and the sun has a center, and the galaxy has a center, and you have a center. And we have displaced our center from the body up into the head. And then we wonder why our lives feel off balance. And again, it's not a matter of achieving or creating the center. It's there. How do you surrender to it, despite all the prohibitions against doing that that are offered by our culture. And the last quality of being is attunement. Everything attunes to everything else. There is nothing around you that doesn't feel your presence. When the body recovers its fluidity, its groundedness, its spaciousness, its centeredness, attunement, like the singing bowl, is made possible. So to understand that the route to wholeness is a route of successive surrenders rather than something to achieve, because you can't escape wholeness. Where would you go? You're embedded in wholeness. It's there. But our culture has so many barriers against wholeness that it's a process of undoing. And I would also suggest that in that imperative to do that is set up by our culture, we forget gentleness and how to be gentle with yourself, how to feel the breath as gently as you can, how to feel the present as gently as you can. That too is a really potent means of facilitating the surrender.
That's beautiful. I'm wondering how you see the future of embodiment practices evolving the context of holistic health and wellness. Do you see that happening?
Oh gosh, I think it's imperative. Our healing modalities have been so top down up to this point, have been so driven by idea, and the body longs to be whole. It's primed for wholeness. And so how to facilitate that, how to resensitize it. And more, certainly in psychotherapy and other modalities, in trauma healing, embodiment is being recognized as indispensable. That best-selling book, When the Body Says No, it is the ground of our being. And for thousands of years, we've imagined that the whole of our intelligence is bound up in the head and that the body is merely a vehicle for the head to move it around and facilitate, implement its commands. The body processes over 1 billion times more information than we can be conscious of. And to come out of the little puddle of information that the head can grasp and move into that ocean of information. That's how our ancestors survived. They attuned to the world.
Something you just said there made me think of AI and how there's so much talk and it's taking over and how quickly it can process information. I mean, that's basically one of its signatures, its trademarks, if you will. But what I'm hearing you say is that the body processes way more than we could ever know. And maybe for now we can consider that to be one of our advantages, right, over AI.
Yeah, and just to say, as a culture, we've lost sight of the body's sensitivity. So we're reminded by indigenous cultures. There's a Unangan culture in the islands that trail off Alaska towards Russia. And there's an elder, Ilarion Merkuliev, who talks about as a child sitting with the hunters, and what they were hunting was sea lions. And they would sit on the shore in stillness, in quiet, attuning for hours without daydreaming, without drifting. They were attuning, they were feeling it all. And then one of them would say, sea lion coming, and all the heads would turn and look in the same direction. Now, this sea lion could be 10 miles offshore, impossible to see, but they could feel its presence. And over and over and over in indigenous cultures, you see the facility for feeling the world around them. There are cultures that feel the animals, in the world around them. If they need water, they feel the presence of water around them. They feel medicines being offered by plants. That is the body's attunement. That is, for me, the route towards healing so much of the pain and grief that has been caused by our separation.
Beautiful stories. Maybe we can close by having you share just a little bit more about yourself and perhaps a personal experience where embodiment played a crucial role in your own healing journey. I'd love to finish on personal stories in this podcast, personal practices.
As an actor, I worked with several mentors, and one of them was Stephen Rumbelow, who was one of the pioneers of physical theater in England. And he had an exercise he called the horse. And basically, it was letting the body move as it needed to without judging it, without supervising it, and if you hold yourself still, well, eventually the body's going to want to move, and to let that happen. And there was one day when I let that happen and was just carried by the world, and I was so much freer. I was more able to rest within my wholeness after allowing the body to live in that way without directing it, without shunting it, without asking anything of it, just to let it be and live as it wished to.
Well, thank you so much, Philip. I really enjoyed our conversation today, and perhaps our paths will cross again. I think our worlds are so similar that it feels kind of inevitable. Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure. Thank you, Michelle.
If you'd like to learn more about who we are and what we do, visit us at innerpeaceyogatherapy.com.